Welcome to another episode of Experience Annex. Experience Annex is a platform for role models, particularly exemplary leaders, legendary entrepreneurs, and world-class professionals, to share their wisdom with the world, in particular African youth. On our platform today is a man that I admire tremendously. His name is Richmond Dayo Johnson, or as is fondly called RDJ. He's a highly sought after international keynote speaker, experiential consultant, and coach on appearance, behavior, and communication. His vast practical experience and knowledge of the Anglo-African environment spans 3 decades and has worked with a mix of clients ranging from radio, television, corporate organizations, politicians, the military, and government. An alumnus of the prestigious University of Teesside, Middlesbrough, England, RDJ is a fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts, a certified coach, and an accomplished and certified advanced Toastmaster. He worked at GEC, Newton Aycliffe, County Durham, and IBM London before becoming Deputy Managing Director of Universal Communications Group, publishers of the job paper, London. He spent 3 years at different locations in Europe as one of the key strategists and presenters on Radio Kudirat, the voice of democracy, during the tyrannical years of military despotism in Nigeria. He was also chairman, Southwark Community Business in South London during the inner city regeneration of the 1990s by the British government. RDJ was a lead judge on a weekly television reality program, The Debaters, Oratory, The Power to Change, watched all over the African continent and beyond by millions of viewers. He is a charter president of Croydon Toastmasters and a past area governor in East Surrey and Kent of the esteemed International Organization on Effective Leadership and Communications. RDJ, I'm excited to have you on Experience Annex.
I think it's really a pleasure and also a privilege to be invited on this forum. Thank you very kindly.
Let's go straight to the questions, RDJ. Please tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, I thought you'd just done so. Is there anything else to add?
Yes, you need to add some more.
Well, maybe let me just take you back a little bit. I was born in Lagos, in Nigeria. And I had my primary and education in Lagos, and left for England shortly after a short stint with one of the international broadcasting organizations in Nigeria. And I went to England and I stayed there up until not too long ago, really up until about 5 years ago, when I started spending more time in Nigeria. But there's something that people do not really know, and probably some even forget, that about 30 years ago, I was actually in Nigeria for a year for the mandatory National Youth Service, during which I worked with one of the television and radio stations in Nigeria, and made lots of friends during that period. That really paid off much later. I will come to that.
So you did your education in Teesside, or at Teesside University,
yes,
and then came back to Nigeria for your youth service.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about your it's a secondary school background? You studied you did your secondary school in Nigeria,
yes.
Your primary school in Nigeria, and which schools were there?
I went to, first my primary school was at Ladlak Institute in Yaba. Ladilac Institute. I'm sure it still exists.
Ladilac.
In Yaba. Purely working class area. So just an ordinary state school, non-fee paying, and I left there for Freeman High School, a missionary school, a Methodist school in Sudan, Lagos as well.
Birch Freeman. Okay. How did you, as far as I know, you spent more than or about 35 years in the UK before deciding to come back home. Why did you decide to return?
I think first I lived most of my adult life in England. 30 years to be more precise, because 5 years ago, if you're counting that, means that 5 years ago, I'm 35, that I have been resident and living in England and working in different parts of the world. I spent 5 years more here in Nigeria than any other time. And I returned to Nigeria 5 years ago purely on invitation. I was asked to come down to be part of a transformational team that was building what has now become one of Africa's finest radio and television conglomerate, broadcasting all over Africa and in Europe. So that was the reason my return to Nigeria was purely on an invitation to be part of the team.
RDJ, most of our audience or viewers have never visited England, I suppose. Can you tell us a little bit about life? You spent 30 years in England. Can you tell us about life in England or UK in general?
Well, if you say most of the audience never visited, but there's so much you can learn these days via modern technology, so there's absolutely nothing I can say that's different, apart from the fact that living in England as an immigrant, you've got to recognize that the streets of London, or United Kingdom, the streets of London are paved with gold and broken dreams, so you decide which one you want to go for. I went there purely for education, and when I finished my education, I was lucky enough to get a job, and I stayed on in different jobs all through. But I think largely it was being able to identify opportunities in the midst of difficulties and brushing yourself up, learning the language properly, learning the culture, learning and understanding the nuances of how the people behave, understanding their environment, and where possible, it will be better. So I think the key thing is to immerse yourself in a culture for thorough understanding before you appreciate it. That for me would be one of the key things. But I really enjoyed it. I had moments of challenges which were necessary, but most of that was able to turn into opportunities. That's why I'm standing today.
So, as you said initially, it's something you can read online. It's not something you can read on Google or just Google England and then you understand to understand.
Once in England, I got married. I got married to my childhood sweetheart. We started a family. And all our children have all graduated. So I have young adult children now. We work in various industry sectors. Very well.
So I mean, what you said is different from just Googling England or UK. You understand? Living in the Anglo, the British setting, understanding the nuances, and the thinking faculty of the people is we have shared it. RDJ, I came across you. I mean, I've never met you. As I've told this story in several platforms, I met you. I read an article that I believe was the best article I've ever read, and I think it was on something on either personal polish or something. And towards the end of that article, you said emphatically, if you wish to write and speak as well as I do, join Toastmasters. And I started wondering. I was thinking that Toastmasters are comedians or some people that wear this. So you are a Toastmaster. Who and how did you get introduced to the club?
About 15, 16 years ago, I as one would at the time, we would normally spend every 6 to 8 weeks, we'll be away from home, because for me traveling, very, very important, exposing the children to different culture, exposing them to different environments, and learning new things. So we were away, spending some time in Buckinghamshire in England. So we were spending some time with a good old family friend, and my wife and his wife were in the kitchen, getting ready, cooking dinner. I was in the study, which was a place I really, really loved to be, and I saw a book, and the book talked about the art of public speaking, and I thought this is quite interesting. Within an hour or so, I saw myself really immersed in this book, and I read it very quickly, and towards the end, the author said, if you really want to develop this speaking skill, I just made a few suggestions, and one of the suggestions there was Toastmasters. So I looked at it and had a number, I had some details of where you could go in England. So I picked up the phone that evening, when we got back to our home in Surrey. So what happened was I returned to Surrey and I was restless. Picked up the phone and called the number that was advertised, and it happened to be the phone number of a gentleman, Adrian Barrett, whom I've come to respect and admire a lot. Adrian picked up the phone and he said, introduced himself, but at that time the website had not been updated. He had just left. He was the immediate past president of the London Corinthians, one of the Toastmasters clubs in London. So he told me all about the club, and the next Thursday, believe it or not, I was there. Now, you see, when the student is ready, the teacher will prepare. When you find something that you are looking for, you would never ever hesitate to jump once you know it is what you're looking for.